Despite the shared heritage, cultural differences and misconceptions have sometimes led to a social disruption and social distance between the two groups. To bridge the gap, it's essential to foster open dialogues that address stereotypes and promote mutual understanding. Now, collaborative initiatives in education, business, and cultural exchanges can serve as a platform to strengthen these ties, which leads to mutual growth and empowerment. So the question I want to ask, and I'll start with Mr. Kosia. How can we create stronger ties for mutual growth and collaboration between African and African American communities?
I think, thank you very much for having me. I think there's a keyword that you just mentioned, misconception. You know, I know everybody else probably must have experienced that. You know, at Howard University, some of my African American students were asking, was like, you don't seem like the description that we've had before about Africans. And I said to them, well, you know, we have the same perception. And I said to my colleague, I'm like, you know, we have the same perception. I think, I'm not going to say it's ignorance, because he made a statement that we heard Africa sleep on trees, we don't wear clothes and all that good stuff. And I said to him sheepishly, I'm like, you know something, there's a US embassy in Sierra Leone where I'm from. Ask your ambassador what he sees in Sierra Leone, not what you've read in the past, of what someone else is telling you. So I think the key is misconception, just like you said. I think for now, a lot of us Africans came to the US. I think I call us refugees, whether it's economic refugee, educational refugee, you name it. A lot of Africans who are in the diaspora who are contributing immensely to the US. So for me, I believe to cut through the misconception of it, I think traveling, when you travel, you find out things for yourself. I think I can speak for Sierra Leone. I think what Sierra Leone is doing now, there's a program by an entity called African Ancestry. So what African Ancestry does, if you do your DNA, you trace your DNA to Sierra Leone, you're giving Sierra Leone passports. And there's also another program that Sierra Leone is doing called Go for Gold. What Go for Gold is, if you invest about 65K to buy 1 kilo of gold, you guarantee to have permanent residency. After 3 years you get citizenship. The reason why I'm saying this, we have to cut through what has been said, or what whoever maliciously had mentioned about Africans and African Americans. Yes, we do get along. And also, interestingly, normally when I go to Sierra Leone, I go to Sierra Leone a lot with 3 missions. I used to fly from here to Accra. But recently, I flew to Brussels to Freetown. My colleague, Marcos, and my big brother over there can attest to that. There was one time I was flying from Brussels to Sierra Leone. I can tell you, close to 95% of people in the flight, and that flight was packed. 95 to almost 97% were Caucasians, white people. So I said to myself, you know, they can criticize all they want, but they're going to Sierra Leone. So I think it's incumbent on our African American brothers to not just listen, to come. There are opportunities, for instance, Sierra Leone has actually upgraded the program. Now you don't have to, your DNA does not have to trace you to Sierra Leone. If your DNA traces you to West Africa, you can get a passport in Sierra Leone. And the passport that you will get is an ECOWAS passport. And that passport allows you to go to 15 African countries, visa free. So I think it's not about the talking anymore. We have to engage. I know Ghana is doing a significant work on the Afro Nation thing. There are a lot of people who are going to Ghana. I think people have to come to see Africa for what Africa is.
Thank you very much. Does anyone want to talk on it as well before I ask you? I want your own take as well.
I guess I can just kind of add on. You know, not everybody is fortunate enough to do the travel. So you're going to have your African Americans who have been here all their lives. I mean, I went to school in Baltimore City. I know people who lived in Baltimore ain't never been to DC, and they're in their 50s. So how do you engage those kinds of conversations to that population? Because that's where the challenge is. I was on social media I was supporting a cause. So there was some kind of an HBCU cultural exchange with the university in Africa, and I was so excited. I was like, yes, this is what we need. We need to. And so I had a young man challenge me on Instagram. He was like, what's so exciting about that? I'm like, what? As a young black man, you're mad that I'm supporting an HBCU having a cultural exchange with another university? He was like, well, what about the African Americans that have been here all their lives that will never ever have that opportunity? What about us? And so I was like, let's take this conversation offline. So he's now my friend because he had to check me for a second. I was born and bred in the DMV, but I'm originally from Cameroon, and I went to school in Cameroon. So I've been fortunate to get the best of both worlds. And so he said, you have to remember your parents came here for an opportunity, which gave me a head start to be able, even though I hustled, I worked hard to get my doctorate and own a business and do all of those things. He said, but you got the head start because your parents came here. They were not originally enslaved in the United States and have to go through the whole segregation, discrimination piece from hundreds of years ago. It's a different ball game. So I have a head start compared to them. So I think what we need to do is have more of these dialogues in those communities. We need to meet them where they are. And for some of us who are professionals who get to interact with that population, because I worked at a federally health qualified center in DC where 75% of my patients were uninsured, were on drugs. They're humans too. So it's also our duty to educate them. So, they're looking at my name and they're like, Anye or Anyinke, where are you from? What that mean? What's that? You don't sound like an African. We all have accents, so that's where the conversation starts. Yeah, you say that I'm not African, but I have an accent and you have an accent, right? And so that dialogue starts there, and then instead of getting upset, let's converse, because now this is an opportunity for education and opening doors and just kind of starting that dialogue right then and there. So that's where it starts, is not only coming to Columbia, Maryland, but maybe having to go to Northeast or Southeast and meeting them there.
Thank you.
I think what's a great part of the story that you just shared too is a lot of this misconceptions and confusions, a lot of it comes from online. It's not really in person. I mean, when I come to Black American events, when I go to African events, I see Black Americans there. Our last event, we had a person that was repatriating to Liberia.
Yeah. So
this is not, I think sometimes we get caught up in how things operate online and how people talk online, and these are faceless people. Because you never know who's really behind the other side of that profile pic that's saying some crazy nonsense. And on top of that, I think the education piece is huge. Across my life, whenever I've engaged in these conversations, I'm always so surprised at how little people know about each other's struggles. There are Africans that understand that slavery happened, but they don't really understand how it happened or how bad it was or how long it lasted. I went to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and going to Tulsa and seeing a city that was completely destroyed and understanding the pain that caused, Rosewood in Florida, and understanding that this was time and time again, this was happening. This would destroy the spirit, and that was the point of it, was to destroy the spirit of the people here. People talk about the Great Migration from the south to the north. That was a migrant crisis. They were escaping terror. They weren't just going for opportunity, they were escaping terror from the south. And we often understate that. We understand migrant crises when they happen in our continent, in our countries, but we don't understand that for Black Americans here. And then vice versa, a lot of African Americans understand that colonization happened, but they don't understand how deep it went. I mean, the only African language script that's left on the continent is Amharic from Ethiopia. Everything else has been wiped out. That's a crazy thing to think about. Like, we've lost even our ability to communicate in our own written languages. And people don't understand the deepness of how deep the pain and the scars of these go. And instead of learning the way that we did it in the 70s and the 80s, instead of doing that, now it's you should have done better, or you're taking my experience. It's very frustrating for me. I'll just give a quick story. I was in, it was back during the 2020 lockdown. I don't know if you guys remember Clubhouse, that was big, everybody was in there. And I saw one come up. It's my first time seeing this debate happen in like this kind of way. And they were having African American. And there was this young Somali woman who was saying, oh, why did Black people in America, like they've had all this, America's here, all these opportunities, why haven't they like done this? We came here with nothing and blah, 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 and we did all that. And I just had I did my only time I ever spoke on Clubhouse, and I deleted the app after because I don't, there's a lot of yapping, so I'm good. So I get on there and I ask them like, hey, I asked her, what did your dad do back home? And she had the nerve to tell me he was the admiral of the Navy. I'm like, yeah, you didn't have no money, but you don't think it's crazy that you came here, you already had a house, that you already came here and your dad had 4 degrees, and was able to make those connections. And there's just, sometimes it's crazy how there's these like blind spots, very, very basic blind spots about our own experiences. We spend too much time learning about each other from other people and not learning about each other from each other. And that's why I really like the idea of when someone comes to challenge you online, if you have the opportunity to take it on in person, much better conversation, and people can actually engage and actually learn, and it's a mutual dialogue. And oftentimes it goes way better than it goes bad. So, yeah, that's what I want to add.
Well, first, thank you for the invitation and opportunity and join this conversation. Listening to what everyone has said, I taught for about 10 years in Texas at the University of Texas at Austin. So it's a large, as the community I'm sure know, very large Nigerian population in Houston, and we get a lot of those students. So every year, I think they've outlawed it now, but there's Black graduation. And, easily the funniest thing over the past 10 years was going to Black graduation, and the woman who would read the cards of everyone's name, Brenda Burke, she didn't have a PhD, she's been teaching in the Black Studies program for 30 years. And after about the 6th or 7th Nigerian came up and she butchered their name, and she's trying her best, the kids would just come and grab the mic and say their own name. And at no point in the whole time I was there did anyone ever say, give phonetic pronunciations so Brenda can say their names right. And I think they loved her. They understood she wasn't being mean about it. But I give that as a kind of a humorous way to think about, from my perspective as a professor. I'm from Kansas City, African American, and Kansas City is very insulated, so we didn't have a large Caribbean population, a large African population. I remember I went to Central State University. This is in the late 80s, early 90s. Marauders used to dominate Howard in football. We don't anymore, but that was the first time that I had encountered Africans on a consistent basis, people from the Caribbean, as well as from elsewhere throughout the US. And this was one of those transformative moments for me. And so when I'm in class, and there's one class in particular, it's a course I teach on liberation in the African diaspora. There's a kid from Houston, he was a Kappa, and he was describing how his father would get up and drive him around Houston and disparage African Americans. And he said that when he first started in college, in high school and then in college, he would argue with his father. But then after a few years of college, he began to see that his father was right. And I was just like, well, I'm looking at the Greek letters on, in Black stuff. I was like, so what made you come to agree with him? Yeah. And, it went around and around. And by the end of the semester, he began to really rethink some of the things that he had come to accept. And it wasn't to dismiss his father, but it was to get him to really think about what he was seeing and what he was saying. So, that African Americans didn't work or things of this nature. And, so we talked through all of this stuff. But what really got him, and this was something that I realized about Texas and even the Nigerian communities, was that it is a very insular experience, just like my experience was in the Midwest. So we talked about the Nigerian Biafra War. Several would mention how their family had survived the conflict. But then invariably, the students who were African American always remarked, wow, I never really thought that people from the Caribbean or people from the continent went through anything similar to what we went through. And the Nigerian students would say the same thing. I never really thought that African Americans went through things like we went through. And they also didn't travel that much. Those who were African Americans spent time in Texas. Those who were Nigerian went back to Nigeria and Texas. And so it was a very kind of insular experience all around. And so I can see where travel, where education and conversations are important. And I'll just give this one funny anecdote. So my name, I renamed myself when I was about 19. So Minka is Ghanaian, Makalani is Kenyan. Recently I did African ancestry and I found out my DNA traces back to Senegal, Guinea-Bissau, and Sierra Leone. So I was totally off.
We'll give you a passport.
But now that I know I can get a passport, particularly in this day and age, I might need to take the embassy up on that.
Right.
No, we've literally been like, where are we gonna go? I didn't know this existed. So, okay. But about 20 years ago, I went to Ghana for the first time, and I was there with a conference. And I had gotten sick. I made the mistake of eating something that I shouldn't have. And you get in. So
Yeah,
is it
standard
palm
procedure.
nuts?
Yeah, palm nut soup. Did you have-
Yeah, I was warned. Don't eat it. I'm like, I'll be all right.
Street time?
It didn't go well. But the woman I was dating at the time, she then set up for me to go. They went on a tour of Cape Coast and something else. So she set up for me to go on by myself the next to last day. And for African Americans, that is something that is just emotionally overwhelming. And I was by myself. I wasn't with anyone that I knew. You go in, you get to the door of no return, and just everything was hitting me about what this meant, what someone who could have been my ancestor felt like, what they saw ahead of them. And I'm welling up, I'm tearing, and I, for various reasons don't cry a whole lot, but I'm just like, I'm ready to let it fly. And I turn around, and there's this white couple had on an NYU jacket, and they're laying some flowers. Another sister is kind of to herself, meditating in one part of the dungeon. And this little boy, about 9 or 10 years old, comes up to me. It's very bad what your people did to my people. So immediately my mind went to the group that I was with. Like, what did they do yesterday to piss this little boy off? I'm like, wow, this is really deep. And he's coming up to me like, wow, they done really screwed up. I'm sorry, what? What happened? Colonialism, slavery, it's very bad what your people did to my people. I was like, oh son, no, I'm not white. And I had on a Brooklyn shirt, and he looks and he's like, oh, African American? And I was like, yes. From Brooklyn? Yes. Do you know my teacher? And I was like, oh wow, no I don't. But it was enough of a point of recognition where he could register, even as light as I am, and I understand outside the US, I may not be seen as black, but it was enough that he registered, okay, there is this connection. And I think whatever those connections might be, however we might link up, as thin as that connection may be, and as invented as it may be, like I would definitely go to Sierra Leone, but I understand I'm not going to be going back and finding family. I'm going as a guest, someone who's not born there, but is returning and trying to make a connection. That those are nonetheless really important. And if there is, particularly in this political moment, if there is a charge that we have, it is to see the real value and political efficacy of these connections, even as we grapple with our differences, disagreements, and conflicts.
So that was a very good response to the topic I had here, which was bridging the gap. And you could hear how they did. So it's interesting that my next question segues from where you ended. And this is about what I call the new narrative of hope. And then to give you a concept, misperceptions between Africa and its diaspora often arise from historical narratives shaped by colonialism and systemic racism. Now, to counteract this, it's crucial to highlight stories that showcase the resilience, the innovation, and diversity within African and African American communities. Now, what we've seen is that media plays a pivotal role in this to endeavor by promoting content that reflects authentic experiences and achievements. We can reshape public perception and foster a sense of pride and unity. So the question here, and I'll go back to you, how can we overcome past misperceptions between Africa and its diaspora?
I think I'm loud enough, right? I think, like I said, the misconception, and I like to pick on that word. It's not uncommon for us Africans that came here to have this thing in our head. If I can come from Africa without knowing anybody, I'm able to survive here, go to school, get a good job, raise a family. I mean, if you are an African American, how come you're not able to do that? So I had to check one of my friends once, and I said, you know something, the way how we were brought up in Africa, because I've been to several African countries, I don't see that much difference, similar. I noticed the US system is very individualistic as opposed to Africa, let's say, where I'm very family oriented. It's difficult for you to find a homeless person inside. Most of the people that you see around the street, they're either mentally challenged, you understand. When a crisis hits a particular family, friends or close family take them in. It's not uncommon to see 4, 5, 6 people in one bedroom in Africa because we have that collective mentality as opposed to the US. So I said to my colleague, I'm like, you know something, the way how we're brought to Africa, we don't realize it's a blessing until you come to this part of the world. Fast forward, my African American friend, I think we were chemistry class together. I was very, very weak in chemistry, so we became very close because he knows it anyway. So we studied together. So he's been to my place, my apartment, in few of my other friends. And he said to me, you know something, I admire you guys so much. I've been to few of your parties, my colleagues attest to that. I've been to a few of your parties, I see you guys are together. I've been to some of your friends' houses, apartments, I see you guys. For me, as someone from the US, it still boggles my mind to see you guys can come here and able to do so many things as opposed to us African Americans. And I said to my friend, I'm like, you know something, as poor as we are, there's still our family units. The father is there, the mother is there. Some of our African friends, it's either the mother is in jail or the father is on drugs. At the end of the day, most of these guys raise themselves. And it's exacerbated when you raise through TV. So I think those misconception or how do you call it? Misperception. I think just like my sister said, the more we talk, the more we engage, that's how we're able to bridge this, because we're not going to let the media do that for us. We have to do it ourselves by engaging one at a time.
I mean, my take on it would be for us to be a lot more intentional. We should be very intentional with our immediate surroundings and the people that we interact with. Because at the end of the day, in the United States, because we're here, so I'm gonna speak of here, black is black. So when you're driving down the streets and you have a racist cop that's about to pull you over, he's not seeing this is Babatunde or Ifoma or this is Kimberly or this is Quantrell. You're black. So the whole African American thing goes out the window. When you have a woman, I used to be an ER nurse for 6 years before I became a nurse practitioner. If you have a racist physician where you have a woman who is black in labor trying to give birth and is rolling down that stretcher and she's not getting the care she needs, and she ends up dying, and the baby ends up dying, there is no, was that Kimberly, or was that you're black? So I think a lot of us need to really be we need to be a lot more conscionable of that fact. That at the end of the day, we are the same people. Our backgrounds are different, without a doubt. They are. We come from different backgrounds, but we need to be more empathetic and just understand and accept that. And we need to really start working together, as we all know. We really do. Africans are migrating here. We have our African American brothers and sisters who are trying to go back as well. But currently, the state in which we're in, considering this political climate, I think we need to be a lot more empathetic and intentional when we're interacting with our black brothers and sisters, because we are brothers and sisters. There was colonization and there was slavery. At the end of the day, we still got the short end of the stick. So we really need to work together. We need to be more conscionable about our communities and really putting in the effort. Hence the reason why we even have something like the Commission of African Affairs, African American organizations. It's for those reasons, so that we can interact, communicate, and be one, and just to unite on the economic level, educational level, and you name it.
Thank you. So I think the way that we can bridge the gap, one, I think it's already kind of bridging. Again, the amount of like African Americans I know who talk to me about their interests, like Black American people I know that are interested in just understanding more about the continent and potentially seeing it as a home. It's more than, it's every year it's a different person coming and asking about it. But I do want to use some statistics to ground us in some stats about the Black immigrant population here. So according to the Pew, by 2022, 1 in 10 Black people in the U.S. are immigrants. 1 in 5 are children of immigrants. And I think that group is a really important group for bridging the gap, is the children of immigrants, the experience of being raised here. Now for me, I was born in Ethiopia, but I was raised in America, in Ohio. And so for me, I got to see what it's like to have to go through this very racist public education system, going through the very racist policing system that is around us. I mean, Columbus, Ohio is one of the most protected police departments in the country. And it's very easy for police to do whatever they want. And again, it doesn't matter if you are me, him, any of y'all. Like, I was just in Maryland in Annapolis at the State House testifying against ending 287G. It's a law that essentially deputizes local officers to operate as ICE officers. The thing that's really scary about that is that puts Black immigrants in pretty much in a crosshair. But it also does it to Black people too. Because now with local officers with 4 weeks of training, which is nothing, are going around and harassing people to see if they have their papers. And in some cases, they can't tell the difference between us or Black American people that are raised here, and it's putting us both in a situation where we are at the crosshairs of the defunct immigration system, and we are at the crosshairs of the horrible policing system. And it's very important that we come together on these issues to argue to protect them. That's why I wear this shirt, immigration is a Black issue, because it really does affect us. It doesn't, regardless of, for Black American folk, people think, oh, that immigration is not an issue that impacts me. No, it does. It very much does. And we need to kind of taking the role of immigration, the younger generation, and engaging with that. And I think economically too, another stat that I heard, I have a friend that works at the U.S. Department of Treasury, and I asked her, I was like, which state has the most business with the continent? It's Maryland. That's important to think about. We have 200,000 Africans in Maryland. That's the fourth largest share of Africans. That's the fourth largest share of immigrants in the state. I mean, the country. The fourth largest share of immigrants in the country is Maryland. The fourth largest share of African immigrants in the country is in Maryland. So, if you want to talk about bridging the gap, it's here. Right there. I mean, we're on the coast. That Baltimore Harbor was very, historically has been used to transfer things from back and forth from the coast, from the west coast of Africa to here. And it's still a harbor that we can take advantage of to make sure that we do these businesses, that we support the communities back home. Because a lot of times, 70% of the continent of Africa is under the age of 30. All of us leave by the time we're 30. It's not anything bad. Listen, there's a lot of bad stuff that pushes us away. But that is the truth. We're losing all of the people that make up the economy, the people that build up the industries. All those people come here. And so all of our countries are losing all this talent, coming to these places, building this place up. And we should be working with our Black Americans, using our connections to our home countries, to develop bridges, to develop economic bases across both America and Africa. Because almost every other group has a really strong economic base. I mean, I did some work with the Chinatown group, and it's amazing how the amount of trade and connections that these Chinatowns have with China, with Shanghai, I forget the big one, Guangzhou, all these places. That is something that we can build, and it starts by shea butter. It starts by Beautiful Bliss. It starts by just getting something and bringing it here, and then showing how it can be used and taking advantage. America is all about money. We can take the mask off. This is just a money place. That is what it is. You come here for money. That's what it's for. If that's the case, let's take advantage of these markets, build and invest into the communities that look like us, and also take that investment and build into our communities back home too. Because at the end of the day, this place, it's not for us. It never was. And we can still be here and enjoy, live our lives and everything. But at the end of the day, for me, it makes more sense to invest in the communities that have been harmed, that look like us, that come from us, and at the same time, bridging that gap and connecting it back home too.
Excuse me. You know, I think about this question, and I'm a professor, so I'm teaching this stuff all the time in one way or another, and I work on kind of political history, Black politics, national politics. And one of the things that I focus on in a few of my classes is the Haitian Revolution and how we think about the connections that people in the African diaspora have built to one another. And one of the things that a number of people who study the Haitian Revolution have posed is, are we talking about a revolution of the enslaved, those people who were born and raised in Saint-Domingue, as it was at the time? Or are we talking about an African revolution? Because we know that the average lifespan of someone enslaved in Saint-Domingue was 7 years. It was more economically viable for plantation owners to work people to death and buy another person and then work them to death. And this is one of the reasons why the Haitian Revolution was able to happen, because people were coming who were militarily trained. They were experienced in war, and they refused to abide by those deals that certain leaders tried to strike. And this ultimately leads to the founding of Haiti. But that doesn't stop there. It doesn't begin there, and it doesn't stop there. And so we have a very long history that spans the 20th century of African Americans, Caribbeans, and Africans building political connections. So the Pan-African Congress movement, which begins in 1900, started by Henry Sylvester Williams from Trinidad. W.B. Du Bois is there. Then the congresses that begin in 1919. In 1945 is when you have a Pan-African Congress in Manchester, England, where the largest group, the largest contingent at that point are Africans. And the shift goes to African decolonization, ending European colonialism. But possibly the most dynamic moment is when Italy invades Ethiopia in 1935. People throughout the African diaspora want to go and fight for Italy's independence. Now, there's a whole lot of discussion that you can have about Haile Selassie, monarchical rule, etc. But Ethiopia, Selassie, there's a reason why Rastafarians look to Ethiopia. There's a reason why so many people try to go and fight literally. And this is the point in US history where Black politics shifts from the belief that if we prove ourselves to be good enough citizens, if we prove ourselves to be worthy, we can be full members of the society, to saying we have to deal with these inherent problematic structures in the society that we are in. And this is the point when you get Aimé Césaire from Martinique, writing in 1951 in his small pamphlet, Discourse of Colonialism, where he basically says, everything that's happened in England, in Europe, in Germany with the Holocaust, y'all upset because it's happening finally to white men. But when it's happening to Asians, when it's happening to Africans, it was fine. So this has been a long-standing moment of political connection, sometimes fraught relationships, sometimes vibrant. I think now, in terms of the most popular local group among African Americans, it is unfortunately the ADOS crowd. And while I think they maybe have some good intentions, they're definitely wrong-headed. This is, I forget which one of you said it, but the internet may be failing us at this point with their popularity. But nonetheless, I think the main thing I would take from all of this is that none of these connections that happened historically just happened naturally. It took people engaging, talking to one another, reading one another's works, having conferences to come in contact, challenging one another. And, you know, again, the history of these connections are littered with all kind of hostility, name calling, degrading remarks, and not just in the US. I did some research on London, research on Francophone Africans and Caribbeans in Paris. It's consistent. There are all these conflicts that plague those efforts at political solidarity. But there are even more profound, long stretches of political alliances, political solidarity, and working with one another. And I think that's, as has been said, that's going to be really important over these next 4 years. And you know, the reality is, these next 4 years might be bad, but depending on what we do, that could be another 20 years, or it may just be only 4 years. So we really have to think about how do we build these relationships and connections and work together.
I'm gonna ask you to hold your questions, but I'm seeing some people might be having some questions. Well, we've been talking about some of the challenges, but let's get to some bright spots. That's what I call it. And what I want to add is, let me give you a thing. Economic empowerment is a cornerstone for community development. And what we've seen in recent years is there's been a surge in initiatives that drive economic growth within African and African American communities. For instance, the rise in tech hubs in cities like Lagos and Nairobi. And I want to thank the panel again for what they are doing and what you are sharing to do. So it all comes down to this: policy and advocacy. Because we could talk all day, we could do all we do, but we need the laws, we need the policies to make things right. So that brought me to this question that I want to frame in this way. Policymakers and advocacy groups are instrumental in creating frameworks that facilitate collaboration between African and African American communities. Now, through policies that encourage cultural exchange programs, educational partnerships, and economic investments, these entities can bridge the gaps and promote unity. Advocacy groups, by raising awareness and lobbying for supportive legislation, ensure that the interests and voices of both communities are represented and heard. Now, their combined efforts can lead to sustainable initiatives that honor shared histories while paving the way for a collaborative future. So that brings me to my last question. What role, because you are in policy, so this is for you. So what role do policymakers and advocacy groups play in shaping new initiatives that connect African and African American communities? For those who came late, we are talking about African and African American, how we can come together to do it.
So it's unfortunately I'm at the spot, so take a deep, and it's only for questions. Can you ask the question?
Yes. So what roles do policymakers and advocacy groups play?
Say it again,
I
sir.
want to use the mic.
Okay.
It's a good question. So the question is, what roles do policymakers and advocacy groups play in shaping new initiatives that connect African and African American communities?
I think one of the things that I learned when I was at Howard University, this was when Sierra Leone had the Civil War, I was the vice president of the Sierra Leone students at Howard University. So at the time, we were working with several organizations, Amnesty International, Catholic Relief Community, CRC, and a bunch of other organizations. So basically what they were doing, they were using us, putting us students in the forefront to lobby Congress. So I remember we had a day called Advocacy Day. So we actually went to, I think, like 3 representatives and 2 senators. So it was at that moment that I learned that a lot of the things that are happening around the world, it's Washington, D.C., that Congress, that's where decisions are made. So we were actually having a meeting with the, his name is Donald Payne. I think he passed about 4 or 5 years ago. He was the chairman of the South Africa committee. So we're sitting in his room, in his office, and then everybody was giving their submission. And then he said to us, he said, listen, he said, I know I've done my research, I know there are a lot of Sierra Leoneans in this DMV area. And I bet you a lot of them have kids who are born here, and a lot of them are citizens. He said, one thing I would have to advise your community is to have Sierra Leoneans flood their congressman or the senator's office. Because, and he said, the dirty truth is, everybody in this chamber, the key for them is their next election. Whatever ideas, whatever issues you're dealing with for them is how do I get elected to my next election. So what he said was, what you guys need to do, you need to rally your community to have people call Congress, flood their senators or their congressmen with calls. He said when that is done, that will affect what members are going to vote on. So to your point in terms of policy, policy is key. Policy is key in Washington, D.C. I actually work with some lobbyists. What they will tell you, I can guarantee you, I can give you FaceTime with a congressman or a senator, but I cannot guarantee you that it will change policy. So I think Washington is a place where there's something called special interest. It has to mean something for them to change policy. Most of our policies in Africa are not affected in Washington. Some of the policies that are affected in Washington is something that the U.S. or multinationals are benefiting from. For instance, there's a nasty war that has been going on between Rwanda, Congo, and all those places. The reason why that war is not going to end, because there are people who are benefiting from Silicon Valley. So they turn a blind eye to most of the things that are happening. So to answer your question, I think when it comes to policy, I think we or us as Africans, we have to learn the system, because at the end of the day, whether you want to believe it or not, the US controls the world. When a policy is made here, the Brits will follow, the EU will follow. So Washington is a very, very powerful place. So we need to know, us as Africans, to see how we can sit down, craft policies, and actually either find a lobbyist or find somebody that can channel that for us. Thank you.
I kind of touched on policy with the last question. So what I'll say is, it really starts with you. It really does. I'm of the mantra of making your community your business. And if you don't make your community your business, others will. And then you get upset and things don't go your way. And I'm not trying to toot my horn. I can be very overzealous with work. Hence, reason why I am a nurse practitioner. So I see patients every day, and then I'm on the Commission for African Affairs. We even had a meeting tonight, but I couldn't make that. So I chair the health committee for that, and we have a big health fair that's coming up in Maryland to especially target African immigrant communities so that they're aware of the resources that the state provides, and for those that don't have insurance, how to become insured. So we're planning for that in August, September, and I'll have that communications at the African think tank as well. But then I'm also teaching at an HBCU, right? So I'm teaching nursing students. And then, you know, I'm a part of nursing organization. So the point I'm trying to make here is I really make my community my business because I care, right? You just have to give a damn, especially when you have children. They are our tomorrow. So you have to also immerse them in these conversations. We need to educate them. Let them start to understand the importance of policy and the importance of community. Because sometimes, you know, we attend these meetings and simple examples such as, like I told you all that, you know, I was born and raised here, and I'm not as fluent in my dialect because my parents did not speak to me in the dialect, right? So, you know, you have grandmothers talking to me and I'm not understanding anything and they're upset. And I'm looking at my parents like, now you see, because it's the truth. I'm being fully transparent here. You didn't make sure of that. Now granted, I lived there, but we speak English or we speak French. So that's what was commonly spoken. You have to bring the children in, you have to teach them, and for you as the parents and the adults, you have to participate. Those PTA meetings, you should be going there. So don't get mad when they want to start teaching your children things that you don't like, or they're leaving out history because y'all weren't there to advocate. So they'll create all these groups, but if you're not going to them, what's the point? You know? And so again, that's why, like, you know, Paul said, we're just so grateful that you are here to attend such events. It's platforms like the African Think Tank that actually allow for us to engage and have these conversations so that when they leave here, you're taking them somewhere else and motivating and encouraging other people about other organizations and how they can be a part of their community and the things that they can do to make things a lot more beneficial and pivotal for us.
So my job as the DMV director for African Communities Together is to get Africans engaged on their local and state issues. It's hard sometimes, and it's hard because of the gaps in understanding of civic engagement and how our federal structure actually works. A lot of times people, especially if they come from, you know, back home, the government is this all-powerful entity that can do everything and can do anything to the people or to anything, and then there's the people themselves. Here, I mean, I had the privilege of working with Rep. Omar on a few different things in Minnesota, and one question I had to ask her was like, how has your engagement with your community been, with your Somali community? And she says, one thing that just stuck with me was, when I go to white communities, they're interested in my policies and what I'm doing here. When I go to my communities, they want to know what I'm doing for Somalia. She's a representative. She can't do anything for Somalia unless she's on a certain set of ways and means, you know, certain committees, which she wasn't. And we do civic engagement, civic education to help get people up to speed. And you'll be shocked at the gaps of knowledge that exist. And some of them, they're very good questions. One of my favorite interactions was after doing a day of civic education where we taught people about how we got civil rights, how Black Americans fought for us to be here. Essentially, we would not be here in any way without the fight that they put up. And then talking about our federal structure. The question I got after was like, why do states have rights? I'm like, that's a good question. That's a question that many of us might not think about because we just kind of learn it as we get older, you know, across our time in school. But these are very valid questions and things that people need to understand. What is the local? Like, what does it mean to be a local representative, a state representative? So civic education is extremely important. My organization is a member-based one, and I highly recommend joining or being a part of any type of member-based organization. We have about 3,000 members in the area, 15,000 across New York and DMV and Philly. And we're growing and growing, and we want to get more people into our network for the sake of getting this information out there. We provide translated materials about everything. Who's your representative? What are they saying? What are they actually trying to do? And what's frustrating for me is, you know, when I go to a lot of immigration advocacy spaces, it's very heavily Latine dominated. And that's for obvious reasons, population and everything, of course. But I'm always shocked at how little Africans I see there, even in a state like Maryland, I mean, if our Latino people aren't fighting for our immigration rights, we really have no immigration rights to fight to work with, and we have to honor that and show up in those spaces. And organizations like myself, we develop those opportunities. We did a series of lobby days during last year's World Refugee Day. We're going to do another one coming up, where we're taking people to whatever representative senator that is your representative senator, and we're helping to engage in conversation. We take people from that have never been to the Capitol, and training them and teach them how to engage in these conversations. It's really just a matter of just training. It's just having these conversations. So organizations like African Communities Together, organizations like UndocuBlack, organizations that are all across the DMV that are trying to engage with our communities need us to show up, even if it's just subscribing to a mail list or just being a part of the membership. Because when I go to a senator's office or a representative office and I say I have 4,000 members, I want to be able to say I have 20. I want to be able to say I have 40. The reason why CASA and Maryland can do what they can do is because they got 100,000 people that they can organize like that. Right. We can't do that at the same scale, but we can build to that point. We just have to really be intentional and joining these spaces, joining these groups. So I highly recommend checking out our website, checking out UndocuBlack, checking out if you look at Black immigrant rights organizations, BAJI, Black Alliance for Just Immigration is another one. All these organizations are doing the work, and they just need, literally the easiest thing you could do is just sign up for a mailing list or joining membership, just so we can have numbers to share when we go to these spaces. And another thing that I really want for, at least when we're engaging in these spaces, we cannot forget the causes that are impacting Black American people as well. Reparations is a fight that includes all of us. I don't believe I deserve reparations. I'm not from here. That's not what I usually say. But it's important that for a country that has given reparations to Japanese people for the internment camp, native land restoration in some cases, not always, and all these other things. This one group that has been the most impacted, the most hurt, the most damaged, has not gotten a penny from this place. So why are we not all fighting for the people that made it so we can be here? Why are we not fighting for them to make sure they get the reparations they deserve? Sure. So I really want people to understand that we are in a moment right now that we need to stand up for. If you question the power of the African vote, let me give you an example in Virginia, in Alexandria. So there's a large Ethiopian population there. The governor at the time, during the Ethiopian conflict, the governor at the time decided to side in a way that upset so much of the community there. And within an instant, they all showed up to the polls. And they got that governor out, and they got a Republican governor that hates immigrants. Right. Because they were so laser focused on that one specific issue. And we're trying to pull people away from that single issue voting. And we want to get people to understand it's a package when we vote for people. But it takes time, and it takes education, and it takes a lot of time. It's very frustrating when I saw that happen, especially for my community. I was embarrassed to see my community vote so callously. And then now, when we work in that area, we're having to work with them to help figure out how to make their business safe from ICE, how to make their businesses safe, how to make their communities safe from ICE, how to make sure they don't get caught with papers in the wrong way. So it's extremely dangerous that we don't actually organize, because we do have large numbers of our communities in very big, important cities and states. Africans are everywhere. You can find a group of Nigerians in Alaska. They can show a county, right, if they wanted to. So we need to understand that our power, our existence, even being here, can move mountains. It really can. It did it on accident. Just as this one community that said, "Oh, forget that guy. He said negative things about our country." And now we're in this horrible shitstorm in Virginia where we're fighting against Glenn Youngkin just to get basic rights about housing. He's denying everything, and all this because our community was misguided in that way. So the best thing I can say to people, get involved with these organizations. I named many: African Communities Together, Black Alliance for Just Immigration, UndocuBlack. These are all organizations that work to help engage with Black migrant communities around the issues. And it's important for us to have y'all there, even as just a number, so that we can actually push the things that we need, both for our communities as Africans, but also our Black American communities as well.
Anything I thought I was going to say, pretty much covered it. But this, you know, these kind of I don't know these organizations, and I think the only similar organization I know about is Trans-Africa. I'm not really sure what its status is at this point, but there's this long history of advocacy organizations that focus on policy, but that go beyond just the realm of policy, because policy is a double-edged sword. What Trump is enacting is a series of policies. So in and of itself, it's not a solution. But I think about the Council on African Affairs that took the concerns of Africans, took concerns about the actions of colonial powers on the continent. The International African Service Bureau in London in the 1930s, which formed around the Italian invasion of Ethiopia, but focused on the actions of the British Empire throughout the African and Caribbean, the African continent and Caribbean. And then up more recently to a range of different organizations, including the range of groups that focused on ending apartheid and agitating and organizing around divestment in the United States. So I think this is a really rich history, and I especially appreciate the idea of that focus also coming back the other way, where this is a vision that Malcolm X had, a vision that W. Du Bois had, Amy Ashwood Garvey had, that the African continent can actually advocate for African Americans as well. So I think this is really we should take this up.
Yeah, I want to add something to your point about education. I want to add something to that. I think it's key for us to engage our communities in educational communities. For instance, something happened in Michigan recently. I have a friend who actually lives in Michigan. Michigan has a huge Lebanese and Muslim population. So they got together. They were specifically they put a group together that was to vote against Kamala Harris. And he said to me, he said, "Oh, I don't get it." He said, "I don't know what Trump is going to do differently." Well, of course, I mean, everybody saw what happened during the Israel-Palestine conflict. And they was like, well, Biden did not do this, Kamala did not do this. And he said to them, it's like, what difference is this going to make with these two parties? Why do you guys want to vote for Trump? A few weeks ago, he called me and said, listen, I was 100% right. Right now, there's a buyer's remorse in Michigan, especially when Trump is talking about making Gaza a Riviera, wants to kick everybody out of Gaza. And he said, you know something? The Democrats' policy might not be different from the Republicans. He said, but I bet you the immigration issue that we're struggling with right now in Michigan is unbelievable. So education is key. And you know, oftentimes people are locked into our community, whether it's because of work, because of family, we're not engaging. You understand? Because I think if we had educate our people what the policies are. I know about the issue with Yonkin in Alexandria. I have friends who live there. They told me, this guy, we're going to vote the Democrats out. And what difference does it make? Now, Yonkin is an issue for Ethiopians in Alexandria.
My name is Shiva Rujeju Hakiza, and I work in the area. I'm in the area of international public health. I work in being able to leverage technology to be able to increase access to quality healthcare for underserved communities. My question to the panel, and I just want to thank you also for having this event. I work in the diaspora community on the executive board for Rwandan Community Abroad. I also serve with, actually, Kathy, who just stepped away, she is the president of our Washington, D.C. community, and I serve as the Commissioner for Trade and Investment. So it's a difficult time for us as part of the Rwandan diaspora because of the criticism that is being placed on our government, on our country, on our people, and I have grown up in this country. I came here when I was 2. I was born in Uganda. The reason why I was born in Uganda was because of the civil war and the discrimination against my ethnicity for my father and the legacy. So we've lived as refugees, pretty much. I've lived as a refugee in the United States. And for us to be able to grow as a collective African people, we have to understand who is interested in our demise. For their benefit means to completely divide us in every way possible. And now we are seeing in the richest land, almost the richest land on the continent, the Democratic Republic of Congo, where there has been massacres of people. Congolese have been massacred by their own people, and the people who committed the genocide against the Tutsi in 1994 fled Rwanda and have been living in Eastern Congo, causing absolute horrific acts. And at this today, there are people who are ethnic Rwandans, based off of the 1884 division of Africa, when Europeans decided who was going to take which piece. And if we don't see that they are designed to keep us as African Americans separated, as Congolese and Rwandans and all these people, even if, let's say, theoretically, there is a mineral processing plant that's in Rwanda, how many other countries have mineral processing plants in Congo today? China is the largest mineral processor. The United States, Russia, all these other countries are taking advantage of Africa, whether it's oil, whether it's whatever. So when are we going to say we are the ones who have the power? Everything that they need in this country and Europe is within us. Yes. But we have to get past these divisions that have intentionally been our biggest weakness. And so I just pray that I'm thankful for this. I am a person who grew up in the U.S. I went to HBCUs, I went to PWIs for graduate school, and I love my brothers and sisters no matter which part or what time they came to this country.
My name is Tiffany, and thank you all so much for this wonderful discussion. I just want to say I'm grateful to be here today. So today, I just told her that I just saw this organization on my timeline today. On Instagram. I've never heard of it before, and I saw it, and I said, oh, there's a meeting today. I said, maybe I should go. And I live very far. I live, you know where Dallas Airport is?
Yeah.
I live out there. So this was very important. This is what I want to say. So with everything that we've been discussing, the one thing that is consistent within the global African community, whether it's in the continent or here, because I have traveled to the continent too, is that no one really seems, and this is just based on my observation, my experience, and what I understand, is that we're not investing in the children. So the problem, the reason why there's so much generational issues regarding coming together and having this disconnect is because we don't invest in the children. So let's talk about the museums. The National Museum of African Art in DC and the National Museum of African American History and Culture, none of them have children's centers. And you go to any state, I've been to many states, and you won't see a children's center. I've been to museums in the continent, and I haven't seen a children's center. And so you might think, well, why is that? Number one, clearly we're not thinking about the children, because whatever you value, that's where the money goes. And so if we're not having children's centers, that means we're not valuing them. So if we want to really see any change, we have to invest in the children, because the biggest breakdown is the mindset. And the mindset that we have, the slave mentality I call it, continues because people don't quite understand it. And they don't know how it happens and when it happens, where and when. And so we just continue this thing going on. But you can change it if you are aware and understand that your thinking works against your best interest or the best interest of the community. So I think what I really just wanted to add to the discussion is that every point that you guys have made is absolutely wonderful. But we have to start talking about the children. Lastly, I will say, with all the organizations I've ever been a part of, or, you know, black organizations that have been around, the oldest one has been around over 108 years, Dr. Carter G. Woods' organization. And no children are hardly ever there. It's the baby boomer generation that's in most meetings of all organizations that I've ever attended within any black organization. The baby boomers continue the wonderful connection of being involved. But somehow there was a disconnect between making sure the next generation, which would be me, would be a part of that, and so forth. And this one man said years ago when we was honoring Carter G. Woodson at his celebration in DC, he got up and he said, "Where's the children?" And my baby was the only one there. She's 12 now. So the point is that we, if we're really serious, then you have to invest in your children. And that's it.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Axel Akun. I'm from Cameroon. I'm a financial planner with Mass Mutual, actually up in New Jersey. But I'm here because there's no New York chapter, so I figured it's close enough. But a lot of what's been said this evening has really, really resonated with me. And after about 25 years in the financial services industry, this year I decided to become an independent financial planner myself, because I think that, at least what I've seen over the 25 years, is that there hasn't been that right level of engagement when we talk about financial services within our community. When you walk into a room full of financial planners of some of the largest firms, and you look around, you won't see people who look like us. Henceforth, you won't see people engaging the community like we need to, unless they have, millions and millions of dollars. So I've always thought that it's very important for us to be able to have, to be able to engage with our community at any level of wealth, to talk about what your needs are, and to build economic empowerment within the U.S. and then certainly back in Africa as well. So that's why I moved into that space myself. I joined a firm that enables me to do it in the way that I need to do it, that in the way that enables me to engage with my community. And I wanted to participate in, here at the Africa Think Tank. I heard about it from a relative of mine, and I said I should come check it out and see what's going on. But in some of the things that we talked about, or at least that I heard, I think one of the key things that sticks with me that I also want to share with everybody, because as we talk about Africans and African Americans and how we work together, I think one of the important things to remember is that we are one, we are similar, we all start late, no matter what it is, right? It doesn't matter which one it is, we all start late, and we love to eat. So there's a lot of similarity across our communities. And there's a lot of similarities across our communities. But I think one of the important things that we always have to remember is that the engagement starts with relationship. And building that relationship through empathy, understanding, and compassion. The stories are different, and they impact us all differently. But for those of you who are here who are from Africa, one thing I would encourage you to do is, when you next go to Africa, take somebody with you.
Yeah.
Because candidly, there's a lot of apprehension. You don't know what you don't know, and it's difficult to venture in a space that you don't know. And even for some of us who are from Africa, you go home and you're looking behind your shoulder. So because there's a lot going on. There's a lot of poverty. There's a lot of there can be danger in some parts, and even those of us who were born there are cautious extra when we're there. So I can't expect somebody who's never been there to just freely take that venture. There's some people who are a lot more adventurous than others, but I think generally speaking, people will go if they're going with somebody who knows where they're going. And this year I'm organizing 2 trips, one to Tanzania and one to Cameroon, for people in my direct circle who have expressed to me over the years that they want to visit Africa. And so we have to be that bridge. right? We have to be that bridge to Africa for those that are in our direct communities, wherever you live. And so if you know somebody who has ever said they want to go to Africa, take it seriously and say, hey, I'm going in December, how about you come with me? Because I guarantee you, they will figure out a way to do it because they know that you know where you're going and they're going to be comfortable and safe with you. I have a list of about 20 people who already signed up to be part of my trip just because they know me and they know that if you're going there, then you'll figure this out. So that's something that's really... Nope, no money. I'm not. Hey, I go. I'm not a travel agent, so I'm not getting any money on these trips. But I go often, and I tell people that I go, but I've never taken anybody with me. So that's one of the things that I noticed.
By 2050, 20 years later, it's going to be $29 billion. I'm giving all the statistics for us to know. That region, Africa, is the future. You said something about population. 75% of the African population, it's under 35. You have about 600 million Africans from 15 to 35. So the tech that you're talking about, I think Africa is the next frontier. So at the end of the day, I think it's now time for us to start forging this partnership for see how our brothers and sisters can come and invest. When I come, because I travel a lot, you have our African brothers from Sierra Leone and other parts of Africa that will say, oh, there's corruption, there's blackouts, there's this, there's that. Well, guess what? The Lebanese are not going anywhere. The Chinese people are not going anywhere. Now the Turkish people are coming. So we can complain all we want, but there are people there who are making a killing of our people. So I think economic development is key. All this other discussion about A, B, C, and D, if somebody know if I put my money here, I'm going to make money, they will come. And then also another misperception that businesses around the world make about Africa, they will tell you, oh, it's very risky to do business in Africa. According to Moody's Analytics in 2024, for risk of investments in infrastructure and other investment, Africa is 1.7% risk. The Americas, South America is 13%. Europe is about 10%. So people can make all these assumptions, but the frontier is in Africa. For instance, the African Development Bank is investing about $3 billion to start adding value to our agricultural products. Because you and I know most of our products that we consume in Africa are imported, whilst we have the raw materials. And another thing that we're dealing with also is energy. The World Bank has a program called Project 300. So what that project is to light 300 million homes in Africa by 2030. So at the end of the day, that's where business is. So I think what we're saying to our brothers in the diaspora, I think you guys should take another look at Africa. If everybody else is there, I think with the expertise and exposure that they have here, I think we can partner. For instance, I was doing a project recently. USTDA was going to give us feasibility study money. So one of the requirements, you have to have an American as part of that project. Unfortunately, it was looking good. Last week, I got a call from the coordinator said, listen, we have to put everything on pause because of USAID and all that good stuff.
So the black dollar is very powerful, extremely, extremely powerful. And sometimes when I think about it, I feel as though it's almost like there's an entrepreneurial gene that is woven in the black DNA, because almost everybody knows some sort of trade or to sell something, be it Africa or African Americans, down to selling lemonade on the block, down to opening a business. And I want to say in 2022, according to the Census Bureau, for black businesses, it jumped up by 22%. So that's massive, in that it went from about 160,000 businesses to about 194,000 businesses. There are many organizations, such as the commission that I work with, where we try to really put out the information that is needed to know how to start businesses. And it's also important to support policies that will pretty much avoid certain tax penalties as well. So again, policy is also very important in these United States, as we all know. From down to the water you drink, the air you breathe, the car you drive, the houses that you buy, it's all affected by policy. So policy is super important.
We have a proclamation that I want you all to read. What we don't understand is you have rights. This is your right. In Maryland, there are places that you can go. You can bring folks from Cameroon here. You can have sister city agreements. So it's all here. The governor gave me and the African think tank this proclamation. It took me 5 months. That takes 50 years because we asked for it. But we asked for it as a collective, as the African think tank. You see? So that's why I'm saying, you guys that are here today, please let's stay together. Continue to forge this relationship with us because we're going somewhere. The last thing I want to say is this. Is there anyone here who would love to be a part of the African think tank? By show of hands. Thank you very much. See, I see all the hands. because you see, that's what is missing. You see, leadership is what's missing. So now that you are all here and you take the charge, we will guide you. You know, you have the expertise, you have the intellectual acumen, you have the know-how, but we're not together. So please, after this is our interim regional director. I want you guys to become a part of the African think tank, you know, by any means necessary, and see how we can move forward. In your business, whatever you're doing too, we can enhance it. Okay, that's what I want to say.
How can you support TAT? We value your time. That's one of the most valuable gifts you can give to us. Volunteer at our events. You know, we're looking for leaders. We're looking for people to help with administrative tasks. So if you want to do that, you know, I'm not going to take much of your time. We can work something out, maybe an hour or two a week. You know, that's perfect. Even if it's 30 minutes. You know, we value your donations. They help fund scholarships, community development projects, entrepreneurship programs, and advocacy efforts to create lasting change. And, you know, share your talents and your expertise with the community. So, yeah, and this is for donation. So your donation matters. Every cent counts. Yes. You know, I want to give you guys time to network and, you know, shop, you know, do whatever you have to. I just wanted to say a few things. Thank you so much to our panel for showing up today and talking. It was very insightful, and we value all your time and your energy and your efforts. Thank you so much to everyone for showing up. You guys were an amazing audience. You guys had amazing, not questions, but you had powerful statements to me. So thank you. To you, I grew up with my father is a Ghanaian diplomat. I traveled my whole life, but he always made it a point to make sure that I was in Ghana once a year, almost every year. It is so, so important. As much as you can, try to have the next generation on the continent. You know, now I do it all the time. I was in Ghana for 2 months last year and this year. Yeah, do that, you know, share. And also, there was a list that Manny had, a registration list. Mm-hmm. If you haven't filled it out, please fill it out. Then also, I'll run it around again and put a star by your name if you're okay with being a part of a WhatsApp group. So I want us to be more of a family. I want us to be a community. I want to share your businesses and everything on there so that we can all partner together. You know, and now if you need skincare, no more of that cheap stuff from Walmart. And you need food, you can call, you know, our wonderful food vendor. You know, let's build each other. Let's utilize our businesses. And yeah, thank you guys so much for coming, and you guys can mingle and
yes,
thrive.
please. Then let's stay in touch, please.
I'm covered by your blessings. I'm living by your grace. I'm guided by your mercy. and nothing fi shake me. I'm covered by your blessings, I'm living by your grace, I'm guided by your mercy. No one nothing fi shake me. If them no want you on top, make you go to church, make you pray to God. You go see the sun, you go see the light, and you go shine bright. Again, you make a white, them no want you on top. Make you go to church, make you pray to God. You go see the sun, you go see the light, and you go shine bright. Doctor want you sick, lawyer want you in trouble. Now only tip they pray make you this successful. Doctor want you sick, lawyer want you in trouble. Now only tip they pray make you this successful. Many hour gas make we check for Google. Many people say me I don't too fumble. Many storm rise and mommy will stumble. Yeah, glory be to God. I'm covered by your blessings, I'm living by your grace, I'm guided by your mercy, and nothing fi shake me. I'm covered by your blessings, I'm living by your grace, I'm guided by your mercy. No one nothing fi shake me. If them no want you on top, make you go to church, make you pray to God. You go see the sun, you go see the light, and you go shine bright. Again, you make a white, them no want you on top. Make you go to church, make you pray to God. You go see the sun, you go see the light, and you go shine bright.